Yo, so Alakajam 12 came and went a while back, and we got some games out of it. For those unaware, Alakajam is a tri-annual 48-hour game jam, and the theme for this one was caves. I took the time to play all the games and give feedback, but I also figured I'd do a video about this because we have 23 entries and 22 minutes, so let's get to it. First up, we have In Search of Underground Music, made by Liam Lime and Alphen. This is a game where you play as a magical moon-jumping wizard with no arms, in search of underground music, I guess. In all honesty though, I actually like the graphics. They're charming, colorful, and decently varied for a game jam entry. It'd be nice if the text was clearer though. The colors are nice, but sometimes it can be hard to read. This is a pretty simple game. You basically just continue moving forward and overhear people talking about music and stuff until you reach the end. It's a bit weird that there's only one music track, what with this being a game that's about music, but it does at least vary a bit depending on your location, so that's pretty cool. Next we've got Crave by Yusuke. In this game, you play as Fatso Batso over here, going through this cave eating pizzas or maybe they're hot dogs or something. The gimmick is that as you go further, the level will start to get dark, and you'll need to rely on your sonar ability, which will make a little ping sound if you get close to a wall. It's a nice little idea, but unfortunately you really only need to use it fairly late into the run, at which point the screen is scrolling so fast that it's nearly impossible to avoid the cave walls once you actually detect them. This game also has music, and it's a nice addition to the experience, but just like in real life, you'll need to die at least once before you can start hearing it. The next entry is Blue Cave by Duper Games 2. This is a straightforward little platforming game with some nice atmosphere to it. The game isn't too long, but it's still kind of hard for platformer noobs such as myself. Luckily it's no biggie since there are plenty of checkpoints throughout. Take note, every other game jam platformer ever made. Now we have The Witch, the Moon, and Alice by Hey Hey Hey. A witch has stolen the moon, typical, and Alice, I assume, has got to get it back. I was wondering why this little girl is the only one capable of stopping this witch, but hey, you can't argue with a walk cycle like that. It's embarrassing to admit it, but I actually got stuck on this game for a little bit, despite the fact that you can beat it in like a minute. What can I say, I'm just a real pro. The graphics here are kind of interesting. They've got this sort of storybook feel to them. Maybe that's because the main character sprite was actually based off of an image from a book. Unfortunately, there seems to be a weird glitch with the scaling of the background that makes things too wide. Though I'll be honest, man, I have no idea how this game works under the hood. Next we have Lightkeeper by RB. This game was made in 11 hours apparently, and this is a fact that RB is very adamant that you know. Hey man, it's okay, you don't gotta justify your game to people, it doesn't matter how long you spent on it. The game itself is basically a top-down shooter where you survive as long as you can against these blue circle guys. There's this dithered darkness effect that you get if you don't kill enemies fast enough, and there's also this reload system where you need to wait for a bit after every 6 shots. The darkness effect is kinda neat. In fact, I actually really like all the little effects in this game, but I'm not a fan of the reload system. It basically just means that you need to pause for a bit between sets of shots while the game forgets how to be engaging for a sec. I assume this was added to give the game a bit of extra depth, but honestly I would have just preferred if it had just been left out. Also, the anime AI is pretty basic and can't handle your 6 circle strafing game, but whatever, it's just a game jam game, so it's no biggie. After that we have The Underground Holla by Toaster Tot. This is the first jam game I think I've ever played with proper narration in it, and it's actually pretty dope.
Ah, the surface of Earth. I'm sure you know it well. the hustle and bustle of everyday life, but have you ever taken a moment to stop and just think?
Dude sounds like he's gonna start reading me the opening of a teenage rom-com movie, or is about to try and sell me an electric bike. It's great. The game itself is all about going through the underground and learning about all the different creatures that live there. It's a fairly short game, but it packs in a lot of variety within its playtime, which is always appreciated for a game jam entry. One part that particularly stood out to me was the bit with the fairies. I like how you can avoid being attacked by them if you just don't touch any of the mushrooms earlier on. It makes sense, and it feels like an option that a lot of people who only play through the game once would miss, so it's cool that it's programmed in. Here's Raft by Chion. You play as a penguin on a raft, navigating an underground river with your unborn child, as is natural for penguins to do. How do I know that your kid is in that box? Simple. The unlockable game lore in the music menu told me so. Yeah, this game's got music tracks that you can unlock, and each one comes with some additional story about your penguin's journey. It's actually a pretty neat idea and made the game stand out a bit for me. Not that it's a bad game otherwise, though. It actually controls really well and has a decent level of polish to it. My main gripe is simply that once you get beyond a certain point, it feels impossible to avoid certain obstacles, since you can't move your raft fast enough. Also, I'm pretty sure my kid died at some point here. Now we have a spooky game, Stalked by Toasty and RNLF. Atmosphere on this one is pretty good. I like the shadows and the way your torchlight gets smaller when the monsters get near. Also, the fall death sound is weirdly chilling. It actually startled me a bit. I did end up beating this game, here's proof, but I wasn't recording at that point, so rip me, I guess. Next up, we have a game for you artistic types out there, Caveative by Dictor Dro. In this game, you harness the power of the elements to turn the ground itself into your canvas and evoke the wonder and beauty of natural cave formations. Oh, it's just beautiful, isn't it? Weirdly enough, this game actually has a scoring system, despite the fact that all you do is press buttons at your leisure to make the weather happen. Come on, Dro, we all know the art is subjective, don't do this. Honestly though, I think this game would be more fun if it didn't have all this cooldown stopping you from doing things. Would have been fun to just spam the heck out of everything and see what happened. I did still manage to create some pieces though. Here's one of my higher scoring caves, or as it's known in the scientific community, a hole. It's got nothing on my magnum opus though. There we go. Finished. Beautiful. Up next we have Search for Aaron by Jakuru and Matutius. Your stupid idiot brother has gotten himself lost in a cave, typical, and now you've got to descend and find out what happened to him. Very spooky. I like the attempt to build tension in this game. Just like Stalked, the darkness does a lot to build the atmosphere, and the pieces of clothing and mysterious symbols you find along your journey keep you wondering as to what's going on. Problem is, the game is kinda glitchy. There were some times where it seemed like items would have the wrong text associated with them, and it could be pretty weird. Also, there's this flight of stairs that leave you stuck if you fall off them, and I spent like 7 minutes wandering around down here before realizing that there was no way out. Luckily, there's a post-jam version that fixes a lot of these bugs, apparently, so it probably won't be too much of an issue if you decide to play it now. Toxic Cave by Kesselwolf. This game takes the Jam Award for saddest music. As for the game itself, it's sort of a puzzle game where each of your 3 characters has a special ability, and you need to use them all to get through the level. At least in theory, anyway. In reality, you can get through pretty much every one of the 3 levels with just a dude who jumps really high. I feel like the creator of this game sort of ran out of time near the end, which explains why the levels are so easy and why you don't really need to use the different abilities to win. So far as I can tell though, this is Kesselwolf's first game jam, so it's understandable. Stick with it, man, you'll get the hang of it. Now we have Cave Exploder by Yoshi. First thing I gotta tell you about this game is to play the Allegro version, since the original version has a good chance of just being completely unplayable for you due to lag. Apparently, the original version uses SDL GFX, which if I recall correctly is just software rendering. So yeah, don't play that one. Once you have got the right version, it's actually not a half bad game. You move your spaceship through the cave, and if something's in your way, just blow it up. It's pretty satisfying, not gonna lie. I do have to say though that the turret projectiles can just feel too hard to dodge sometimes. I think there should have been less of them, but I don't know, maybe I'm just bad at video games. I'm actually a big fan of the next one, Miasma by Tomask. Escape from the cave, but only by using the power of cards. Basically, you play the cards in your hand until you run out of movement cards and end your turn. Don't touch the water, don't touch the spikes, and definitely don't touch the ever-expanding purple goop, or miasma, or whatever. I like this game because it's got a lot of short-term decision-making in it. You really get to feel smart when deciding the order of your actions, and it's very engaging. I assume it would get sort of old and formulaic after a long enough time. I mean, there aren't a huge amount of cards, but for the time I was playing, I was having a blast. Unfortunately, I did end up with this bug where some of my cards weren't removed after I played them, and they sort of just stayed in my hand as weird ghost cards that made it hard to tell what I was actually playing. Not too big of a deal though, you know. I still managed to beat it, because I'm awesome. Mining Mayhem. This is an unranked entry by Josh Alex 5. If Toxic Cave takes the award for saddest music, then Mining Mayhem definitely takes the award for happiest music, because I mean just like, listen to it, man. What can I say? It's a real jam, no pun intended. The game itself is a puzzle game, where you need to pull up all the gems using your crane and your block swapping abilities in as few moves as possible. There's a good bit of thinking involved, especially once the game adds 2 new types of blocks that explode on contact. I'm not gonna lie though, the block swapping mechanic actually took me a while to understand. I don't think it's very well explained in the menu. Apparently, none of the levels have actually been tested, which is a shame because I think with a little more balance, they would have been a lot more enjoyable to play. I mean, I had fun, but sometimes it just felt like there weren't any clever ways to complete a level, which is a shame for a game like this. Up next we have Cave In by The Fluffy Potato, but I didn't need to tell you that. Come on, you're gonna look at this and tell me it's not from The Fluffy Potato? We got good tunes, low-res art, and a lot of particles. You know who made this. It's a fairly basic game, dodge rocks and get coins, but it's quite addictive and has a lot of polish. I like the way the coins go flying when you open a chest. It makes collecting them feel satisfying. My only real complaint with this game is the power-ups. There are a few you can collect, but they don't really feel all that useful. Like, I don't know how valuable a high jump is in a game where you die from hitting the underside of a block. Luckily, they're all optional, so it's not like I can really complain that much about them. What do we have now? Cave Collapse by BPM. In this game, you play as a man wielding the world's worst lantern on a quest to find enough scrap to repair his drill. Not really all that much to say about this one, to be honest. You just jump around the level until you find the pieces. Fairly simple stuff. One issue I did run into was not being able to close down any of the on-screen dialogue once it appeared, so I had to do a lot of my playthrough blind to what I can only assume to be a rich and fascinating story playing out in all these signs that I saw dotted around everywhere. At least I was able to find all the scrap pieces, so I can be proud of that. After that, we got Crystal Miners by Fabriboy, Sir Libri, and Turbo. I was gonna mention how sweet this game's music was. But then I found out that it wasn't actually made for this jam, which means that this game is illegal. In all fairness, I don't actually think they were trying to dupe anyone or anything like that, considering they include the correct music credit inside their credits file, but that's no excuse for not following the rules. Luckily for us though, the game is at least rather good. Basically, you're trying to defend this here crystal from waves of miners using various defense mechanics you gradually unlock. There's a good bit of variety and it's fun to use all the different attacks, but unfortunately the balance is kinda weird and a lot of your options become obsolete really fast. Also, these TNT guys feel way too OP. Like, I mean, seriously, how do you deal with these dudes? I don't know. Overall though, it's an impressive and satisfying game that's a lot of fun to play. Next up, we got Sonic by Dining Philosopher and Papa Ver. This is actually the second of the two bat games made for this jam. I guess great minds think alike. Your goal is to go through the cave and collect all the bugs without smashing your stupid little bat face into walls. If you hit too many walls, you supposedly die, but I'm not buying it. Your visibility is terrible, but to make up for it, you have this sort of echolocation ring that tells you how close you are to walls and bugs and such. It's a neat little concept, and it feels rewarding to have the green parts of the ring slowly increase as you get closer to a bug. Not too much else to say about this game, but before we move on, I'd just like to point out that I'm the world champion. I'm expecting my trophy in the mail sometime soon, Dining Philosopher. Ural 300 brings us our next game with Alien to the Past, which can join Raft as being one of the only two games made for this jam to be spelt in all lowercase. This game is a sort of auto-scrolling shooter, but with the added twist of having destructible terrain. It's pretty cool actually. You can even break off pieces of the level and crush enemies with them, which is wild. I'm genuinely kinda curious to know how it was done. The levels themselves are pretty decent, but the balance is a bit off. Level 2 is the hardest, and then it just gets easier from there. Sometimes there are these wave defense segments where a bunch of enemies spawn in, and you have to survive for a certain amount of time before you can move on. But the enemy AI is super basic, so a lot of the time the enemies sort of just sit in one place and you can ignore them. Overall though, this entry is pretty great and very enjoyable to play. Now we have Spelunk the Junk by Zerk and the Sekiro 2. First thing I gotta say about this game is that it has a pretty epic intro. I mean, it killed my frame rate, but damn, it's fairly intense. Unfortunately, the rest of the game is kinda basic in comparison. You move through this cave, you destroy mines, and you spend a lot of time sucking up trash. I guess you could say this game really sucks. Actually, that's not really fair. I was having fun when I started, and the music is pretty relaxing. The problem is more that the game goes on for a long time and never really evolves. You go into a room, you destroy all the mines, you suck up all the garbage, and then you go into the next room. I think this game would have been more enjoyable if it had been shortened down and given some more challenge. You know, maybe some different types of mines or something. But as it is, it's just kind of tedious. At the very least, I do have to admire the variety in the garbage models. There are quite a few. Righto, now we've got Maison by Zilli. In this game, you explore a cave looking for a key so that you can escape. Pretty standard stuff. However, it ended up being a surprisingly frustrating experience for me, purely due to the player hitbox. Usually, in this kind of semi-top-down style, only part of your character's sprite bounding box is actually used as a hitbox, which makes sense. But in this game, it's the whole sprite, which makes things really difficult. If the top of your character's head so much as scrapes the bottom of a spike tile, it's game over. This game took me like 15 minutes to beat, and it's not a long game. There were also some minor bugs with diagonal movement controls and also the graphical bug with the tiles that you've probably already noticed, but they weren't really that big of a deal. One aspect of this game I did like at least was how your character would react to certain things in the environment, you know, like dead ends and lava and stuff. It's a neat addition and it definitely gave the game a bit of charm, but still man, come on. You don't have to you don't have to have this. Alright, final game, and I've saved the subjective best game till last. The rest of the games were just reviewed in the order I played them, but I thought it was worth ending the list with my favorite, and that favorite is Crazy Minecart Miner by Xillantor. Yeah. This game's sweet, man. It's a puzzle game where you need to build a track from the start of each level to the end, but you also have to pick up all the emeralds and deposit them in the buckets along the way. You can place a track over an existing track, but only in a perpendicular fashion, so you really need to be clever with how you use your space. Things start off tricky enough, but then the game starts throwing things like limited minecart space and iron and sulfur blocks at you that you also need to work with. Despite all this, though, the game never felt confusing, and the levels always felt well designed, which is especially impressive because there are 21 of them. You can tell they're well designed because you look at them and you go, yeah, that's impossible. And then you think about it for like 10 minutes, and suddenly you go, oh yeah, that's how I do it, yeah. I guess my only problem with this game is that there's no music or sound effects, but hey, if you like music so much, just put on some of your own, moron. Seriously though, if I had to recommend one game from this jam to you, it'd absolutely be this one. It's just a quality experience. So, that's it. That's my review of all the games made for Alakajam 12. Except mine, of course, because you know, that game's already perfect, so I didn't really feel the need to talk about it here. I hope you enjoyed. I've never actually made a proper YouTube video before, so I hope I didn't do too terribly a job on this one. I originally planned to make this video a lot sooner, but I got kind of lazy and some things got in the way, so it's not really all that relevant now, but I hope you enjoyed anyway. You know, I just spent the last 22 minutes giving feedback on other people's work, so feel free to do the same to mine down below in the comments if you want. I might do some more of these videos in the future if people enjoy them, but until then, I'll see you all at Alakajam 13, in which I'll be refusing to play anyone's games, out of spite.